Have you ever considered that death isn't just physical, but a mirror forcing us to confront our own inner demons? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, saw something deeply unsettling in this ancient text, one most people prefer to ignore. The Bardo Thodol, known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, isn't just a guide to the afterlife. For Jung, it revealed a secret we all avoid, the truth about who we truly are when the veil of reality tears apart. Today, we'll uncover what Jung discovered and why this knowledge remains hidden. Get ready, your worst nightmare isn't outside you, it's inside. What is the Tibetan Book of the Dead? The Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, is an ancient text from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition written over 1,000 years ago. Its original purpose was to guide the soul after death, describing the intermediate states, Bardo, between death and rebirth. For 49 days, the deceased's consciousness would face terrifying visions of wrathful and peaceful deities, as well as illusions created by their own mind. Those who recognize these figures as inner projections could attain liberation, escaping the cycle of reincarnation. But Carl Jung didn't see the text as a recipe for the afterlife. To him, the Bardo Thodol was a psychological metaphor. The intermediate states represented moments of crisis or transformation in life, when the ego dissolves and the unconscious emerges with full force. The deities weren't external entities, but universal archetypes of the collective unconscious, patterns like the shadow, the anima, the inner feminine side of men, animus, the inner masculine side of women, and the self. Jung was fascinated by the text's precision in describing psychological processes. For example, in the Chikai Bardo, the first post-death stage, the soul sees a blinding light, symbolizing confrontation with raw, unfiltered truth. In the West, many would flee from that light, just as we avoid unconscious truths about ourselves. The Bardo Thodol thus became a mirror. What we call death, Jung argued, was the dissolution of the ego and the revelation of what we repressed in life. This view challenged the Western mindset, accustomed to seeing death as an absolute end or a religious mystery. Jung, however, insisted the text didn't speak of ghosts or spiritual rewards, but of the process of individuation, integrating the opposites of the psyche to achieve wholeness. And this was the secret he hid. Death isn't a physical event, but an invitation to face your own truth. Jung's hidden secret about death. Carl Jung saw in the Bardo Thodol an uncomfortable truth. Death isn't a physical event, but a mirror of the unconscious. To him, the terrifying visions described in the text, wrathful deities, monstrous creatures, blinding lights, weren't external entities, but projections of repressed contents of the psyche. When the ego dissolves in death, everything ignored, denied, or repressed in life erupts with full force. And this, according to Jung, is the real hell. Not a place, but the inevitable confrontation with who you truly are. The core secret lies here. If you haven't integrated your shadow in life, it will become a monster at the moment of death. For Jung, the shadow is the closet where we store our traumas, fears, forbidden desires, and shameful behaviors. In the Chonyid Bardo, the second Bardo stage, the soul faces illusions created by its own mind, exactly as we do when avoiding introspection. Jung saw this as a warning. What you don't confront consciously, you will live as fate. Death, then, is the moment the ego's veil tears open, and the truth you've spent your life fleeing appears before your eyes. But why is this hidden? Because facing the shadow is painful and uncomfortable. Western society prefers the illusion of control, the idea that we can avoid suffering through positive thinking or self-help formulas. Jung, however, insisted, individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires courage to acknowledge the dark parts. The Bardo Thodol isn't a manual for the afterlife, but an invitation to die symbolically in life. Only when you kill the idealized ego and embrace the totality of the psyche, light and shadow, does true liberation become possible. This secret remains hidden because it frightens us. How many of us are willing to face our worst selves? How many prefer projecting our fears onto others instead of recognizing that the monster in the mirror is part of us? Jung offered no comforting answers. He saw death as the final test. If you lived authentically, acknowledging your unconscious truths, the light of the Bardo would feel welcoming. If not, well, the Tibetan texts are clear. Those who flee the light create their own hell. Why is this hidden? The reason the secret is hidden isn't the text's complexity, but human resistance to facing truth. The West, since modernity, has built a culture that denies death. We talk about healthy living, longevity, eternal youth, but rarely discuss what it means to die in life, to abandon fixed identities, limiting beliefs, and social masks. Jung saw this as a serious problem. Those who flee psychological death carry an unconscious ghost that haunts them until the end. The Bardo Thodol, by contrast, was training for the dissolution of the ego. In Tibet, monks studied the text from youth, preparing to recognize the deities as internal projections. But in the West, Jung noted, most people prefer the illusion of control. The ego wants to dominate everything, but in death, it unravels. And that's unbearable for those who live by appearances, he wrote in his essays. This lack of preparation creates unnecessary suffering. When facing existential crises or losses, we project our fears onto the external world instead of seeking them within. Even more unsettling is the fact that the hell described in the Bardo is self-created. Jung warned that the shadow, if ignored, manifests as anxiety, depression, compulsions, or toxic relationships. In his view, the Tibetan text was a manual to avoid this trap. If you recognize the figures of the Bardo as part of yourself, they lose power. But if you flee from them, you'll be pursued forever. This idea clashes with the Western mindset, which seeks external solutions, quick therapies, guided meditations, self-help formulas, without taking responsibility for personal transformation. Practical application. How can we use this knowledge? So how can we apply this knowledge in daily life? Jung didn't offer practical solutions in the conventional sense, but he proposed a path: transform fear of death into a tool for self-awareness. The first step is recognizing that every external projection is a reflection of the unconscious. For example, if you feel anger towards someone who always lies, that person might represent a part of yourself you deny. Perhaps a desire to manipulate situations or a fear of being deceived. Instead of judging, ask yourself, what does this person awaken in me that I'd rather ignore? A practical exercise is active imagination, a technique Jung developed to dialogue with unconscious parts. Choose an intense emotion, anger, shame, fear, and in a calm setting, visualize it as a figure. Ask it, who are you? Why are you here? Listen to the answers without judgment. This may sound strange, but it's a way to integrate the shadow instead of repressing it. The more you acknowledge these parts, the less power they have to haunt you during crises or at the moment of symbolic death. Finally, face death as an invitation to authenticity. Ask yourself, what do I need to let die within me to be reborn? Or what am I avoiding because I fear who I truly am? These reflections aren't comfortable, but they're necessary. Just as the Bardo Thodol instructs the soul to recognize deities as projections of the mind, Jung challenges us to confront our internal ghosts. Death isn't an end, it's a mirror. And what you see in it depends on how much courage you have to look at yourself. What Jung hid isn't a secret, but an uncomfortable truth. Death forces us to be honest with ourselves. The Bardo Thodol isn't a manual for the afterlife, but a mirror for the life we live today. Every time you avoid facing your shadows, deny unconscious truths, or project your fears onto the world, you create your own psychological hell. Death, physical or symbolic, is the moment that veil tears open, and you have no choice but to confront the totality of your psyche. Jung offered no magic formulas, only an invitation. Prepare for death while you still can. This means integrating the shadow, recognizing projections, and taking responsibility for your transformation. The longer you delay this process, the more painful the journey through life's bardo. Existential crises, toxic relationships, endless anxieties. As he famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Preparing for death is preparing to live fully. It's not about fearing it, but using it as a compass for authenticity. Ask yourself, what do I need to let die in me today to be reborn tomorrow? Every answer is a step toward individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment answering, what internal ghost do I need to face today? Sharing your reflections can help others feel less alone on this journey. See you next time.